it's Nicole. I'm here today for Thermoweb with our team up for Lawn Fawn. We're going to use some really great Thermoweb products here with some Lawn Fawn fun. So I have the Nitpicky Fall collection from Lawn Fawn along with their Stitched Heart die and a Love die. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go at this point, so I did grab my adhesive pen, some adhesive and foam squares. I'm going to use these hot melt adhesive sheets again, and of course some Decofoil transfer sheets. So I'm going to start off here by just die cutting several hearts from the hot melt adhesive, and as I'm doing this, I notice a problem because there's a really fine detail to that stitched heart, and I'm really afraid that's not going to show, but I'm going to give it a try and see what happens, and then troubleshoot as we go. What I like about the hot melt adhesive, it kind of gives a bit of a texture. So you can see it there a little bit on the screen, how those hearts that are punched out have a bit of texture to them. But I decided I didn't want to waste a bunch of time, so I just cut a whole sheet of adhesive with the rose gold Decofoil transfers I'm going to use. I was trying to choose between copper, gold, and the rose gold, and I think the rose gold matches the colors in this Nitpicky collection really well. So I ran both of those items through my heated laminator, and I'm just going to add some super puffy foam squares here behind my photo. And then I die cut some of you can see the love word here from Lawn Fawn out of some pattern paper. And while I run everything through my laminator, I'm going to just use some mixed media adhesive just to gently put those layers of paper together. You don't need a lot, just a tiny little bit, and I actually just use the knob on the end of the adhesive bottle to kind of move that glue around. You don't really want a lot on the paper or it will buckle a little bit if you use too much of the liquid, the wet. It's the wet in there that makes it warp a bit. So just a tiny little bit will do ya. I'm going to put my Decofoil transfer gel on top just to kind of get that to dry. And you can kind of see here, there is the foiled hearts that are on the hot melt adhesive, and now I'm going to take the one where I just ran it through flat on its own. I'm going to run it through my manual die cutting machine here with that same stitched heart die, and you can see the stitched hearts, the stitching a little bit better if you do it kind of after the fact. So would recommend, you can kind of see there the difference, but I'd recommend that you run a whole sheet of it through and then do the die cutting so you get the detail. As you can see, I have die cut a whole lot of those heart shapes from the Nitpicky paper from Lawn Fawn, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out where I'm going to put those here on my project. I'm going to layer some of the foiled shapes in amongst the pattern paper shapes. So I'm just adding a tiny bit of adhesive to the center of those items and then layering them together. And this took a little bit of figuring out where I wanted to have the different colors and patterns, so that's why I sped this up quite so much, is because it did take me a little bit of time. I was having a hard time deciding on all the lovely patterns and what would go really well with the foil without having it too much foil on my page. So I ended up going with a larger heart with a smaller one in the middle, and then I did layer some foil behind one of the pattern paper pieces, and I'm just going to keep going building different variations of the large with the small, and I'm going to add some plain small ones in as well just for some visual interest. I did go ahead, as you can see here, with my sewing machine, and I stitched down through each of those hearts. And now I want to add a little bit of dimension behind those pattern papers and the foil, just using some 3D foam squares. So I really like this pack. Comes with the larger ones that I use behind my photo, and the smaller ones here you can see in behind my little bits here, the die cuts. So really good that you get a variety in one package instead of having all of one kind. So I'm going to add a little bit to each of those sides of the popped up heart, and that's going to allow me to have kind of some of those layers behind peeking through. So that turquoise one you can see there does have some foil in behind it, and as well as the foil on the one here by the big yellow heart. So on that yellow heart, I am going to use that as my title area for my page. I'm just finishing off here, popping up all the sides of those hearts and getting them all stuck down here on my page. So now my love is all stuck really well, so I'm going to add a little bit more adhesive to the back of it and just stick that in place. Dries fairly quickly, so you don't really have to worry too much about taking a long time. And I realized very quickly that my puppy wasn't going to fit nice and neat in a row along the edge of that love word. So I did use some cardstock here, and I'm just going to make a little vellum pennant. This is also vellum from Lawn Fawn, and I'm just going to tuck that along the top edge. And the mixed media adhesive is really good to stick that down too. So if you add just a tiny little bit to the edge of that vellum, you'll see that it holds in place. Now I'm going to take my adhesive pen and kind of add my own faux enamel dots. So I'm just going to dab that in place where I want it. I'm too impatient to let that dry on its own, but I would recommend you do let it dry on its own. And then once it's dry, you can then take your scraps of foil that you used from your other parts of the project and just run that over top of those circles, and you'll see that you have some kind of like faux enamel dots there on your page. Just some little dots and splashes of foil just to kind of finish things off. I did go cheat a little and go back in after I stopped filming and added in some more foiled and smaller hearts along my page. I did do these ones from that hot melt adhesive that I cut after, and I really like how this one turned out. So great mix with the Decofoil and the Lawn Fawn that I couldn't resist using my leftovers to make a really fun card using some Lawn Fawn stamps, and the same technique there with the foil and the adhesive pen. So I hope you've enjoyed this team up. Stay tuned for more ideas from our design team. Thank you.